All right. Have you ever dated a girl who has kids? If you are a single guy who has kids also, that is definitely a relatively equal experience. As a matter of fact, that is a pretty good match. But if you're a single guy who doesn't have kids, this is where there are quite a few challenges. Now, first of all, let me kind of go over some positives, something that actually is good about and attractive about a girl who has kids, because obviously most mothers are, at least generally, I feel, are more responsible, right? Because they have to be. They are taking care of another human being, and unless there's like child protective services that are involved, most of the time they may not be the best parents, but they definitely have a higher sense of responsibility. They are usually more stable. They can't move around as often. They can't get into like all this kind of crazy trouble, change careers, stay unemployed for too long. Like, it has to be a pretty settled life, and usually their families kind of gather around, and if their parents are still alive, obviously they want to spend time with their grand kids, and therefore it's kind of a kind of a family affair. So they're pretty grounded, they're pretty family oriented. So I think this is definitely a big positive. Now, this is where a lot of that ends, because the challenge is this. If you're a single guy who doesn't have kids, and you start dating a girl with kids, sooner or later, if you become a couple, she's going to be your number one, right? However, you will never be her number one. You will most likely be her number two or number three or number four, depending on how many kids she has, right? And and I understand. I mean, if a girl with kids all of a sudden makes you number one over her kids, that's not good. You probably don't want to be with her anyway. So if this is the biggest challenge that you will face, because it will be an imbalance. I don't want to say of power, but definitely of care and love and affection and all of that stuff. The problem that I face now that I'm dating, now that I'm single, is that a lot of women with kids don't really understand that that's a problem. Don't understand that they are obviously coming with some major baggage, and the guy would have to really sacrifice a lot for the relationship. And there has to be something in it for the guy, right? Unless the guy will just kind of wants to hit it and quit it. If the guy's really looking forward to a relationship and so forth, it is definitely going to be challenging. And unfortunately, a lot of women, at least my experience, are not quite realizing that. And when I, just kind of, I don't, not so much bluntly, but somehow just kind of trying to figure out, well, what is it that, what is that thing that you have to offer that will compensate for that imbalance? And a lot of them don't even understand the question. Not that I phrase it that way, really. Some do. Some do realize that, and that's where you kind of have to decide together from the very beginning. Is this going to be a full on the relationship where you essentially will have to become part of her kid's life? Maybe be part-time dad or full-time dad, step-dad to them, or if this would be a part-time relationship where you would see her, let's say, on weekends, and you guys are a couple, and maybe kids are with their dad, and during the week she's at work and with her kids, and you guys maybe talk here and there, but it is more of a kind of a part-time relationship. And that can work for a lot of people, right? There are quite a few guys who are pretty busy. They have careers, and during the week they spend time maybe watching sports in the evening, or working late, or hanging out with their boys, and the weekends can be specifically for the girl. And so that's not a bad relationship model at all, as long as both of you guys agree on that. Now, of course, I probably should mention that the problem, that one of the biggest problems in this type of a relationship is that the fact that there is probably an ex. Very rarely the ex is not in a picture, which actually sometimes is financially much harder for the girl, right? There is no child support coming in. She has to provide for two. She has to work sometimes two jobs, and that becomes very, very difficult to even have a relationship for her. Now, but most of the time there is an ex, and he is involved one way or another. A lot of times, guys who, when they have to pay child support, they obviously want their rights. And this is where a lot of problems obviously come in, because as soon as if you do decide to get involved yourselves with the kids, well, now you're co-parenting with your girlfriend's ex-husband or ex-boyfriend, and usually those relationships don't work very well, right? As soon as, especially if you're able to maybe give more, affection, time, or even, I don't want to say money, but maybe you can afford a little bit more, that that's where the guy becomes kind of jealous. And I almost understand that, because hey, there's some guy who is now getting all this, getting my kids something maybe I'm not able to do or afford, or the time that, and then that's where the friction becomes. As a matter of fact, a lot of times you can meet a girl who says, listen, I am on a really good terms with my ex-husband, or my ex-boyfriend, and we, have this absolutely great relationship, and we share everything, and he's very easygoing. And that could be true until you show up, until you get involved, and then all of a sudden things are very, very differently. So different. So this is something that you definitely need to consider. You got to figure out how you're going to deal with it. And sometimes you can say, some guys decide, you know what, her kids is just going to be her thing. I'll be around. I'll spend time with them, but I'm really not going to participate in maybe necessarily raising them and doing their homework and all of that stuff. And that's not a bad strategy to figure out how you're going to deal with an ex, because if you're not involved in that stuff, the ex is most likely not going to really feel threatened by you. But if you are, then you have to prepare to how much of sort of, because obviously when you're even a step parent, no matter what kind of parent you are, part-time, full-time step parent, biological parent, the right thing to do is always what's best for the kids. And you're gonna have to enter that territory. So a lot of times what's best for the kids is where you kind of have to, leave your ego at home. And it's sometimes very hard, because it's, your ex's ex. I mean, your girlfriend's, or, your girlfriend's ex. And there's a lot of male testosterone and egos fly. And a lot of times it's very difficult to navigate. Sometimes the ex will actually start, setting the kids against you to kind of nullify the positive influence that you might be having on them. And that's a challenge as well. And all of these issues, by the way, not only I experienced some of them myself, I see a lot of them in with my friends when they try to date, or they do date women with kids. And these are all very, I think, natural problems that obviously will come out of a complicated relationship like that. And of course, there's something that nobody ever obviously wants to think about ahead of time. But it did happen to me as well. I've talked to my ex saying, hey, listen, I'm raising your kids and we're getting very close. I love these kids. And listen, if we ever break up or something goes wrong, I'd like to, I know I won't have any legal rights, but I would like to have your word that I'll still be able to have access to them and so forth. And, she's always been somebody who's always put the kids first. So I really didn't doubt when she said that. Yes, of course. Essentially, there can never be enough people in kids' lives who love them and care for them and can support them. And that's what I thought the understanding was. But once we broke up, she didn't take it very well, and she ended up barring kids from seeing me. Obviously, she and her ex had all the custody. I didn't. And so I ended up really having kids that I've raised for many years taken away from me. So, learn on my experience, because I think I was a little naive. Though I did trust her, and maybe that was part of it being naive. This is something that you have to understand, that, not all relationships work out. Your chances are about 50%. And you need to understand what's going to happen with the kids if you decide to get involved in their lives, if you have no legal custody of them, and what happens afterwards if you guys break up, right? This is something that you should definitely think about it. And let me know, by the way, in the comment section, if you yourselves have have dated women with kids, or maybe you are a woman with kids who maybe had issues, or maybe didn't have issues dating guys, single guys with no kids. And let me know in the comment section if you believe that this is something that you believe that maybe you have a little bit less value as far as the dating game is concerned. If you understand that the guy has to definitely make some major sacrifices in order to date you. I'm wondering if you feel that way. And again, I'm interested in knowing both sides here. This is just my personal experience and observation. But I do know this is definitely very challenging. Now that as I'm dating again, I certainly would very unlikely jump into a relationship with someone where I would once again raise her kids. It would if that ever happens, there would have to be no X, meaning like the guy would have to be completely out of the picture, and at some point I would get some parental rights, or at least I wouldn't have to deal with him, and because that was definitely challenging in my case, and to no surprise. And at this, but I think mainly if I would be, if I was to date a girl with kids, I would definitely want her to understand that this is a challenge, and this is something that we would have to. I would most likely go for the what I would call a part-time relationship, right? Let's say if her ex has her kids on the weekend, or maybe she has her family to babysit the kids on the weekend. Then it would be kind of a weekend relationship where you just kind of stay in touch, or maybe kind of have lunch or drinks really quick during the week, and then on the weekend it's all yours. I actually don't think, if you think about it, a lot of relationships work that way, even if you're married and live with each other, right? If you think about it, your weeknights go somewhere else, not to each other, and a lot of times it's just the weekends when you get to spend time together as a couple. So I would be open to that, obviously. But I know how I would definitely want the girl to be to acknowledge that, she would really have to, I hate to say it, but I'm just gonna say it, make up for the challenges and the baggage that I would have to deal with, and a lack of availability. Yeah, I'm probably going to make a few more videos on this topic as I continue dating, and maybe have some more experiences, hopefully more positive experiences. I'm also going to be reading your comments, and of course I'd like to follow up on those. Let me know what your thoughts are. Other than that, I'm going to sign off. I will see you guys next time. Have a great evening or day or wherever you're at, and I will talk to you later. Peace.